So as you know, Thunderbird School of Global Management is the world's premier leadership and management school. As part of Arizona State University, the most innovative school in the US, we are able to draw multiple disciplines of excellence to empower leaders across sector with future-ready skills to advance inclusive and sustainable prosperity worldwide. And our mission is also directly related to training the leader for the fourth industrial revolution. So I am Landry Signé, full professor and co-director of the fourth industrial revolution and globalization 4.0 initiative. And today I will serve as your moderator. Unfortunately, our dean, Dr. Sanjeev Khagram, who was anticipated to be also in the program, will not be able to join today, and he sent his apologies. So, some important point before welcoming our distinguished guest. So during the session, Olivia, if you can move the point. So we can control muting and unmuting mics. So if you have trouble, so please raise your hand or type your question in the chat window. So we'll also be receiving your questions through the Q&A window. So if you want to ask any question, we'll be more than happy to share them with everyone, as well as we are looking forward to a really lively conversation here. So can you move to the next slide? Or to the slide with Her Excellency. So now let me introduce you to Her Excellency Ameenah Gurib-Fakim. So it's a truly honor for me to welcome her in this session for many reasons. So before even speaking formally about her tremendous experience as the first female president of Mauritius and her the multitude of honors and distinctions that she won, including being named as one of Foreign Policy's 2015 Global Thinkers, among others. So one of the reasons why I'm particularly excited to receive Her Excellency today, so we have been working together on many influential publications, including with published at Foreign Policy, Project Syndicate, the Brookings Institution. And it is incredible how working with Her Excellency is such a delight. The timeliness, when I send a message, she reacts in a speed which is simply unbelievable. And therefore I understood why she achieves so many things that she has done during her policy career, but also the academic one. As a matter of fact, before joining the State House, Her Excellency was managing director of the Centre International de Développement Pharmaceutique, Research and Innovation, as well as a professor. So she's not just a policy leader, she's also a world-renowned academic, professor of organic chemistry with an endowed chair at the University of Mauritius. She served as Dean, among other, chairperson of the International Council for Scientific Union. She's one of the most committed advocates for women in power. So I'm not saying women in leadership position, women in power. She likes to make the distinction. So without taking more time, let me welcome Her Excellency. We are very glad to host you, the Dean and the team at the Thunderbird School of Global Management and Arizona State University. We are all glad to welcome you today, and we give you the floor for your distinguished keynote.
Thank you very much, Landry. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. I know we are spanning the globe. So first of all, I would like to thank Professor Landry Signé and also Dr. Sanjeev Khagram for this opportunity. I'm indeed honored and humbled. In the course of this speech, I will be paying tribute to many people who have helped define my journey. I would not be able to have done it without their contribution. I dedicate this speech today to a remarkable woman, my late mother, who recently departed this world. My parents and my family have been that rock on which I built everything. So, ladies and gentlemen, if I were to give a theme to today's discourse, it would be how migration changes destiny and also the transformative power of education. And if I were to paraphrase Madiba, it certainly has been the weapon that has changed my life. Ladies and gentlemen, my own career path in science and leadership indeed started with my parents. While my personal journey is only one of many and may not constitute the ultimate jewels of wisdom, but as Mark Twain said, it is better to have second-hand diamonds than none at all. So my journey began as an only daughter born in a Muslim family. I have a younger brother, and we are fourth-generation immigrants from India, the country my forebears left in 1862. My brother and I had the privilege of having been raised by loving and supportive parents. I realized later that my early experience was rare and fortunate, and I almost took it for granted. And that is why I'm forever advocating that change will happen one family at a time. My father was a school teacher and my mom was a homemaker, and they both believed in equal opportunity for boys and for girls. I grew up, as you have said, Landry, in a small village where opportunities were almost non-existent, but represented to me a microcosm of the world, a place where diversity mattered. It is a place where Muslims, Hindus, Christians all live side by side in peace and harmony. It is perhaps one of the few places in the world where within 1 square kilometer you'll find a mosque, a temple, and a church. It was a place where I could only go to the local parish to borrow books and sit in the schoolyard and dream. Dream that one day I will leave my village and achieve something in life. My dreams were big and they frightened me, but they did not deter me. At home, from an early age, I was allowed to make choices for myself. The significance of this is that I also had to suffer the consequences. In spite of having been born in a Muslim family, my parents never let faith prevent us from questioning. Subconsciously, I had already subscribed to Einstein's philosophy of, and I quote, "Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind," unquote. I attended a Catholic school, the Loreto Convent School, managed by Irish nuns. I was blessed with motivated teachers who encouraged me to discover the beauty of the natural world and helped to demystify it by answering the endless questions of a curious 12-year-old. The questions were very basic. Why is the sky blue? Why are some plants yellow while most of them remain green? These were the portal into the inner world of the mind. My lady teachers were really my role model, and these religious and lay role models reinforced my interest and courage in following my fascination with science. However, prior to going to college, my relatives urged me to seek the advice of a career guidance counselor, and I did. We are in 1978. Men had already walked on the moon 9 years before, and which I witnessed live on TV. The world's first test tube baby, Louise Brown, was born that very year. The transformation that science could bring to human lives were real. It was tangible, and it was mind-blowing. Yet, despite my advantageous starting point, surrounded by enlightened parents and engaged teachers, the counselor discouraged me from studying sciences. The reasons were as short-sighted as they were disappointing. I was female, and science is not for me. And when I returned to Mauritius after my studies, there'd be no job opportunities for me. Mind you, I was a pretty stubborn young woman, so maybe the opposition galvanized my determination. Shortly thereafter, I returned home from school and announced my father that I was going to follow my heart and study chemistry. I never looked back. I pursued my higher education in chemistry in the UK, and after earning my undergraduate degree from the University of Surrey, I took what turned out to be a valuable year to get some hands-on experience and learn the ropes in industry before earning a scholarship at the University of Exeter for a PhD in organic chemistry. I was studying, after all, the chemistry of carbon, the chemistry of life. Subsequently, I turned down an opportunity to do a postdoc in the United States, returning home where I joined the University of Mauritius to teach chemistry. My passion has always been chemistry, and for my research work, I discovered it in the world of plants, eventually medicinal plants and herbal medicine. My approach was ridiculed inasmuch as it was not perceived to be credible. How can a synthetic organic chemist be proving weeds? My mind was made up. I was not going to be taking the beaten track. Ladies and gentlemen, I built a career standing on the shoulders of grandmothers and traditional healers who shared their knowledge and practice of herbal medicine. I created the very first database on medicinal and aromatic plants of my country and subsequently of the surrounding region. The database has been published in the form of books, and it was my way of giving back. Little did I know that I was plugging a very important gap, the famous gap of losing a library every time an elderly passes on the African continent. Vis-à-vis the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, this work now constitutes prior art for my country and the region. At a personal level, this theme has generated books and scientific publications and earned me promotion up until becoming the first female professor in 2001. It got international recognition, and I was rewarded with honorary doctorates and many prizes, including the L'Oréal UNESCO Prize for Women in Science in 2007. Almost a decade after becoming a professor, and after having served as the first female dean of the Faculty of Science and deputy vice chancellor, I took a leap into entrepreneurship by translating my academic research into a business enterprise, another first for the institution. I was nonetheless in uncharted territory, as locally the ecosystem for such a venture was not, and is still not there. I was taking a big risk and gambling on my comfort zone of academia to that of an uncertain world. Ladies and gentlemen, for the African continent, I need to underscore the importance of this decision. It was a big risk. It was a calculated risk, but a risk worth taking. Mind you, risk-taking is not taught anywhere, and culturally, it does not fit the narrative. It comes with a gut feeling that what you're doing is right, and better still, to have the self-confidence to take it through. The moral of the story is, believe in yourself. Also, in all my speeches, I stress on the importance of creating an ecosystem that will promote enthusiastic young entrepreneurs and promote brain circulation for the diaspora, but also on the need to protect intellectual property emanating from academic research. This may seem anathema to an American institution, but the sad reality in many developing institutions, it holds true. We lose valuable data because either they land in the public domain too soon or stay in a drawer because they do not receive the funding that would have helped them cross the infamous valley of death and improve the livelihoods of so many. New data, new ideas are systematically being lost through the rush towards publication. However, in my case, it was duly remedied when I became an entrepreneur. The enterprise I co-created would have been possible this enterprise I co-created would not have been possible if I had not met the visionary entrepreneur I collaborated with, and he believed in what I was doing. One setup, that enterprise I had created provided employment for many graduates, and he was providing a space for young undergraduates to improve their curriculum vitae by accumulating precious work experience. Ladies and gentlemen, I was quite happily running my company when one phone call would change my life forever, and I was about to take yet another bigger risk. In September 2014, I just came back from Brazil after giving a TED talk when a journalist called me to confirm whether I had agreed that my name be put forward for the forthcoming general election. I was surprised, as I was not aware, and I said so. However, the next day, she published my name, my picture, and she mentioned for president, small interrogation mark. And this acted as a sounding board because people didn't see the interrogation mark and people said, why not? All the negatives I had possessed, being a woman, hailing from a minority religion, non-political track record became positives in election campaign. And people said yes to a Muslim woman, scientist with some credibility. And above all, I was about to put a new face to the presidency. The party won with a landslide, and in parliament, I was elected unanimously to office in June 2015. How does a novice navigate the office of the president, you may well ask? First of all, we have to get used to loneliness. Yes, it is very lonely up there. You are forever walking on eggs without breaking them. One draws from one's reserve to address challenging situation. But for me, I worked through what I believe was right for the country and for my bigger vision for the wider African continent. I celebrated our diversity, the microcosm I spoke about earlier on. My mantra was and still is, our diversity is our strength. In and out of office, I have remained committed and constant to these causes. I will keep on using my bully pulpit to advance the cause for girls and women, promote the investment in the science landscape on the continent, and of course, entrepreneurship. Ladies and gentlemen, since launching my career, things have changed for the better in Mauritius and in many parts of Africa. But while we have improved access to education, we need all the firepower at our disposal to tackle global challenges, climate change, population growth, food, water security, health challenges, to name some of the biggest ones. Facing these existential threats, we must realize that it is not just a moral issue to educate our girls. Gender equality is critical for the economic well-being of both men and women. We must bring all our human resources to bear on these huge challenges. When women participate in the economy, growth is stronger and it's inclusive. We know, based on a wealth of research and experience, that empowering women is a necessary and critical economic game changer for any country. Studies reveal, for example, that if women were to participate in the labor force to the same extent as men, national income would increase by 5% in the US, 9% in Japan, 27% in India. Undeniably, government has a key role to play in promoting the position of women in the labor market. Affordable child care, parental leave, workplace flexibility are all critical tools for equal opportunity. Equal pay, better opportunities for women, promote diversity, reduce inequality, and boost economic growth for everyone. Women must be empowered with knowledge, technology, financial resources, and land. Increasing women's access to finance mechanisms and removing the legal barriers that still exist in many countries are among the ways to ensure that women can stay in the workforce. In the fast-paced world of scientific research in particular, any long period away from the lab threatens the ability to be creative, publish, and be regarded by colleagues as a productive asset. One generation of women and our daughters has the opportunity and the power to bend the arc of history towards greater gender equality and more inclusive global growth. It is a moral and economic imperative that will bring our collective weight to bear to achieve this future much sooner than a century and a half from now. Women can sustain the momentum by voting with our time, our wallet, our social media account. We should be able to run our homes as well as run for office, learn the ropes to climb the corporate ladder, and become successful entrepreneurs. And in doing so, we show the way for younger women. And as Madeleine Albright said, there is a special place in hell for those women who do not help other women. It is our sacred and privileged duty as successful women to create a club of giants in leadership position becoming the best version of ourselves in numbers that cannot be dismissed. We must hire more women, invest in them, and promote civility among us. As I close, I feel that I must point out that leadership requires stamina. It requires a whole lot of acceptance, the ability to remain committed to your cause, and to have the courage of your convictions. It requires understanding the sacrifices will have to be made and the willingness to make them again and again and again. The greatest sacrifice of all is putting everything important, the challenges, the needs, your own ideals, and a sense of responsibility ahead of yourself. One of the questions people sometimes like to ask is whether I believe I would have accomplished more or less as a man. I don't have to hesitate to answer that one. I have accomplished I would have accomplished far, far less. I would have been really just be yet another man. I think that as a woman, I was an exception, and being an exception gave me the visibility and the drive to succeed. I may have been ahead of my time, but I'm no longer alone. We are breaking barriers daily. In another decade, there'll be hundreds of women in real position of leadership all over Africa and all over the world. I take pride in having helped trample down these barricades. I have been one of the lucky ones. But again, I reiterate, I have been able to do this with the support from my family, the sacrifice my parents made to give me an education, to provide me with a house, help by looking after my 2 children, and I know that my daughter Iman is on the line now. When they are small, and even when they were grown up, especially while I was traveling, and to my husband who did not feel threatened by my career progress, most probably because he was very happy with what he was doing. I also have a special thought for my friends, those who have candidly expressed their opinion on what I was doing, sometimes critical, but I take this as positive criticism. And sometimes they have even helped restructure my bio. So to all and everyone, I say thank you. And to you, the audience, for your attention. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for an incredible, inspiring talk. So perhaps one question, let me start with perhaps something a bit complex. What would you mind discussing the biggest leadership challenge you face and what you did to overcome it?
You know, these challenges may seem unsurmountable, but I think at the end of the day, when you're trying to address these challenges, you have to look at the wider good, the common good, how that will impact the institution. And I have always thought that when you take a decision, it has to be taken for the common good, not for personal reason or for personal gains or for personal satisfaction. It has to be for the institution. And this is something that I was taught again at home, that whatever decision you take, it has to be for the common good. So you just work towards this in the interest of one and all.
You have spoken about your family, your mom, your husband, and many of your friends who have supported you in your leadership journey. So, but who in particular has had probably the most influential impact, put aside your family, for example, in your leadership journey?
It all depends on stages of your life. I think in the initial days, it was my father, because he believed that we should be given equal opportunity, my brother and myself. Because don't forget, Landry, in the early days of post-independent Mauritius, it made economic sense for parents to invest in boys, because the perception and the narrative was then that a girl will be married and she'll be leaving the home. So it made economic sense to invest in the boys. But as soon as education became free, then the question was not there anymore. And then this is how it unleashed the potential and of course the drive for girls to have an education. And of course, at the end, towards the end of my career, one person who actually helped me a great deal is my co-partner in creating the company. And as I said, we did not have the ecosystem to go for entrepreneurship, to actually create your own company. So at that moment in time, he was there with the cash, and he was there with the structure that I could actually go and create. So it all depends on stages. So I would safely say that behind every woman, there is not just a man. There is the institution, there's the family, and of course there's society, because women will always get pulled down in society if they're trying to do something different, if they're not going down the beaten track. So going down the new route, can be problematic in many instances.
So yeah, that's fabulous. So in our previous conversation, was not during this interview. So you highlighted the critical importance of speaking about women in power versus women in leadership. So will you mind elaborating on this for the audience?
Yeah, Landry, you're right. I always make that distinction between women in leadership and women in power. When I was doing running my organization, I was in leadership position. When a woman runs her farm, she's in leadership position. But we need to have women in power. And here, again, it's worth pointing out, because it's only when we have women in power that the laws can be modified. And the laws will respond more to the family. The law will respond more to society. And we need to have women at the table. And again, to be very cliche, and I think I've used this expression many times, if you do not find your place at the table, bring your own chair. And if you don't bring your own chair, you're going to soon find yourself being part of the menu. So we have to make sure we have our chair at the table when these issues are being discussed. And this is why we need more women in power and not just in leadership position.
Beautifully said. So the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted the world as we know it, whether in terms of economic, health, or political context. So based on your experience, what will you advise to current leaders in dealing with those disruptions? What leadership skills are necessary to effectively address disruption at that levels?
Can I be feminist here, Landry? If you look at those countries, I'll just take it of course, we are going into, we're lifting the lockdown tomorrow, right? So we have done reasonably well in containing this pandemic so far. But if you look at those big countries that have made massive progress, these are unfortunately, most of them, I'm not saying all of them, but they have been driven mostly by women. Right? We see Germany, we see New Zealand, we see Finland, we see all these countries. Now, there is a different style of leadership here that we're finding when women are at the helm. And here we have seen that women have been communicating in a different way. They have been constant. They have drawn on the expertise of scientists, of experts. And I think they have been much more collegial and much more pastoral in the way they have done it. And they have driven it with empathy. They have communicated by being compassionate. And this is a streak of leadership we haven't seen so far. And this is where women bring in that leadership. Now, having said this, as countries are going into lifting of the lockdown, we're going to see a new landscape emerging. Now, this landscape will mean the disappearance of some of the sectors as we have known it. But this new landscape will also mean taking some very bold decisions. Now, one thing that has emerged for the past 70 odd days, we have seen as part of the lockdown, we have seen, for example, clean air. We have seen blue skies. We have seen nature coming back again to our cities. I mean, all these are telling us something. They're telling us that the normal that we had before, there's a problem with that normal. Do we want to go back to that new normal, to that past normal? Do we develop a new normal? And if we are going to develop a new normal, what kind of narrative do we have to bring? What kind of decision we have to bring? And here I find that some of the sectors which are going to emerge, and I think we haven't maybe not invested enough in it, is the digital space, the digital economy. And we have seen, for example, how this has helped many households through delivery, through home delivery, all these things. And I think we have also seen the care and the care industry coming up. And all these will require a big dose of women input in this, because by nature, we are caring, we are empathetic, we are compassionate, because we are mothers.
So more women in power.
Yes, yes.
So I have many questions for you, but I will shift perhaps to take some of the questions from the audience. And I will give you a couple to three questions so that you can answer depending on the one you prefer. So the first question by Abrata Doe is, what can you say about your leadership transition between the private sector and the public sector? And how does such transition change your leadership style in any way? And the second question, which is connected to the third, by Mamadou Diallo, what's your thought on to be an agile leader, especially in Africa, which is connected to the question of Gobinham? Your Excellency, what is your vision for Africa in general and Mauritius in particular? So, would you mind elaborating?
The transition from the public space to the private space to the public space, I really didn't have time to think about the transition. I was just there. I just landed in the post. So one has to navigate. One has to navigate with many things, right? You're really, holding on to the ropes and trying to make your way through. But I think, as I said again, as I said before, and I will say it again, you have to be driven by a vision and a sense of purpose. And for me, that sense of vision, that sense of purpose was for the common good. What do I bring into that post that will make a difference? And with my background of scientist, with my background entrepreneur, I knew, because in 2015, September 2015, when the UN approved the SDGs, and each of the 17 SDGs, they are systems. And if we deliver on the SDGs by 2030, and here again, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to be a bit pessimistic. I don't know, especially in the light of the COVID and all this, to what extent are we going to deliver on the SDGs by 2030? Let's hope that we'll play catch up very soon. So I think if coming from my background, coming from my experience, I was driven with that sense of purpose. How do you encourage preparedness in our institution? And this is again something that has been revealed in the course of the COVID pandemic. The state of preparedness of our institution, the state of preparedness of the healthcare system, the state of preparedness in agriculture, how we need to invest more in our people. And I use the word investment here very, very carefully, because when I say putting money in education, the youth, for example, I'm not saying this is an expense, it's an investment. And again, to come to the second question, I think Africa has a bright future ahead. Africa is a rich continent. Africa has got 60% of the arable land on the planet. And Africa is sitting, if I look only at the agriculture sector, we are sitting on a $1 trillion business. And how many jobs can be created through this sector? But what is the state of preparedness of our institution to drive only one sector? Now, if I look at renewable energy, if you look at the size of the Sahara, if we go for renewable solar energy, I'm sure it will provide enough energy on a daily basis to actually provide for the entire European Union. But where is the missing link? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. Where is the missing link? Why are we not putting money in our own pocket to fund our own people? Africa's agenda must be driven by Africa's funding and Africa's government and African money, so as to be able to deliver on the SDGs. And if we deliver on the SDGs, I'm sure we will live up to the promise of the UN of leaving no one behind.
Fabulous, Excellency. And you are receiving a lot of comments. People are congratulating you for the extraordinary session. So another question by Tarek Ben Youssef. The multilateralism system faces huge challenges and its relevance to address global challenges and provide global common goods is a question. So do you think that we need a more adaptive and agile networks to address these challenges, and how do you see the role of Africa and the African Union in providing the continental and global public goods?
I'll start with the second part, the last part of your question. How does African Union and Africa, recently there has been ratification by many countries to draft the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement. And to me, this is a right step in the right direction, in as much as, and it should not be delayed, because the COVID could be, an excuse to delay this. Why we should not delay it? Because we will be tapping into the 1.2 billion people as an internal market. Right? I think we have written on this previously, Landry. We have got a captive market of 1.2 billion. I do not see why goods produced in West Africa cannot be consumed in East Africa and vice versa. And this is something that we need to address quickly, and we need to ensure that the quality is addressed. And this, of course, can be done mutually, because it is done at the mutual level. So there is already an internal market of 1.2 billion. We should be able to, address this, and of course generate wealth through this market, which is now emerging. There are many green shoots which are coming up, and we should be able to tap into this. Now, to come up to the other issue of multilateralism, and also to the issue of how much we're doing, there is something I think which is going to change, Landry, post-COVID. We are going to have to look more into there are two words which are going to come up again and again in my narrative, in my conversation: shareholder and stakeholder. For too long, we have gone for the benefits and the interests of the shareholder. It is time to rethink that we need to take on board the stakeholders, and we know who the stakeholders are. The other thing we have to do is how to capitalize the social safety net, right? Capitalize the social safety net, and we need to start paying our taxes. And countries have to reinforce this, because it's only when we start paying our taxes that we'll be able to capitalize and make sure that the necessary services are available to one and all. Health being one of them. We have seen that already with the COVID. Education, because we could have to rethink our education system, the way we are delivering education to our schools, to our kids, because the system of education has worked up to a certain point. And now we're going to have to make people understand that 60% of the jobs that our young people are going to actually address have not yet been created. We're talking about the fourth industrial revolution, but how are we prepared to actually join the wagon of the fourth industrial revolution? Do we have the necessary human capital? Do we have the necessary institutions to be able to come to grips with the challenge that face us? And don't forget, Landry, we have a young population with a median age of 16 to 18 in some parts of Africa. So what do we provide for them? How do we make them, engage in the conversation? I mean, these are things that we have to start thinking. And then, of course, you look at all the multilateral issues which are there, which need to be there. And I think COVID has also shown that there is still plenty of room for multilateralism. We need that. We need more collaboration. We need more cooperation, so that we can deliver eventually on the SDGs.
Oh, that's fabulous. And the mission of Thunderbird, the Thunderbird School of Global Management, is exactly to train the global leaders for the fourth industrial revolution. And many of my students, including from the executive master in global affairs and management, are here today listening and asking many questions. So one of them, James S.R., asked, can you share with us what you believe is the biggest threat to the Paris Climate Change Agreement, and what can be done to reduce or mitigate the threat? And another one, also Mercy Niwe, asked, in your experience as a scientist and woman of faith, what will you say is the role of faith, of religion in development, and what will you recommend as a model of effective operational collaboration to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals?
For the first part, the Paris Agreement, for once in the COP, the history of the COP, the Conference of Parties, we've had an agreement in 2015 in Paris. And this has been driven, mostly the success, I think, rests on the fact that all countries came up with the NDGs, national contribution, voluntary contribution. So this was the reason why the Paris Agreement became successful. Now, when we talk about climate change, we're talking about emission. We're talking about a whole suite of issues which are connected with the issue of climate change. But individually, Landry, we can all put in our own effort. We can, for example, combat plastic use, one single-use plastic. We can start planting, we can start. But at the end of the day, there will be issues that need to be taken by the leadership of this world, by the leadership of this planet. And this is where we need the big players to lead. We need reduction of emission. And this comes with very strong, decision that need to be taken by the G7, by the G20. They need to take that decision to actually reduce emission. And I think the nature has shown us what reduction of emission means and can impact the world. I think the nature has been telling us for the past 2 months, enough. I've had enough of being suffocated with all the emission that's coming out. So we need to take decisions, and these are decisions which will impact the whole world, and we need to take that at that level. And there, all we can do is encourage the leadership to listen to the voice of reason, because there's no two way about it. They need to take the decision and then implement it at regional and of course at national level. Now, what this means for countries like my own, a small island developing state, we are surrounded with the ocean, and we will be impacted directly, because already one issue is more violent storms and cyclone because of the rising seawater, the temperature of the water. We are seeing also rising in temperatures of the water means bleaching of the coral reef, means more violent cyclone, less fish, less, of course, protein in our diet. So all these issues are existential threat to our own livelihoods. But where it matters to countries in the north is that these small island developing state, they may be very, very small island, but we actually host the world's biodiversity, the unique biodiversity, which give poorer, vulnerable people valuable ecosystemic services. And this is something that, we need to be able to bring that to the table. That's why we need scientists to communicate more and more on this. In terms of religion, some people will tell you that as a scientist, you cannot be religious, and vice versa, because the very fact that you believe, you cannot question. But I was brought up in a family where I was allowed to question the status quo. But there always comes a point when, you can go by the theory of the Big Bang, for example, that we emanated from these bacteria, which eventually evolved. But the question is, what came before that? And then what came before that? And this is where the faith comes in. And there's something that, we cannot comprehend, because we use about 2% of our brain, of course, unless you're Einstein, you use 7% of it. But there are still things that we still cannot grasp. And I think this is where it comes down to the issue of faith. And I think I cited Einstein earlier on, that there is a mix of both that we need to believe, and we also need to be able to question some of the tenets of religious practices, whether it is still adapted to the world of today, and how we can make it more compatible with but also without delving, and of course without upsetting the mainstream religious practices as we have known it.
Those are fabulous. Many questions are also around the role of women. I think many people want to hear you more on how to empower women, how women should encourage each other, whether in politics or in business. What is your perspective on this, Excellency?
Fundamentally, to bring more women on board, we need to address two issues. We need to address structures, and we need to address stereotypes. And structures, we need to address that the girl has access to an education. Unfortunately, we have seen, I think, post-COVID, that this will not be the case, because many kids are going to be leaving school again, and poverty will be more entrenched than before. So we need to ensure that the girls have access to a proper education, quality education. In terms of addressing stereotypes, we need to, for example, look at books. How do we actually portray women scientists? How do we celebrate them? And how do we actually make them turn themselves into role models? And this is something which is lacking. The role modeling for many women, we don't see them. And if they are, they're not visible, because the way we communicate is not proper. So address the structure, and we address the stereotype. Now, having said this, I said in my speech, women tend to disparage women more than men. And this is where I make a plea to women. When a woman is up there, when a woman has succeeded, let us celebrate her. Let us ensure that she stays there, because when she will rise, we will all rise as a community of women. And if she goes down, then we all go down together. So I have taken a pledge to take a girl by the hand, to make us see that it's possible. And I think by coming from my village, where I grew up, when nothing was there, that girl growing up in my village can say, yes, it's possible. It's possible to reach the highest office coming from the village where I came from, where I said in my speech, there was nothing there except the power to dream.
Fabulous. One of the member of the audience has a more personal question. So you say that when you were young, your dreams scared you. So can you elaborate on those dreams or goals which were so scary? And another question is also related to the qualities you believe are fundamental for leaders.
When I was growing up, again, I put that in context. I was growing up in pre-independent Mauritius, right? Because I was always asking my father this question every day when I was going when I was going home. Who is this queen we sing to in the morning, right? We were singing God Save the Queen every day. So this was something that, you know, he had to explain to me what the story. So we were living in I was growing up in a village in a country that was extremely poor, right? Where there was only sugar as the king component of the economy. There was nothing. My own, journey, my own weekend pleasures was just going to the airport, for example, to see planes land and take off. There were very few of them. There was nothing. But, you know, I was always digging into my father's collection of books. And I remember reading something my uncle had written. It says, success goes to those who dare, and it never goes to the timid. And I started questioning. I said, you know, I was growing up there. There was nothing. As I said, my only, again, consolation was going to the local parish and hire books. And of course, when you open and read books, it gives you a vista to the world that, you know, I found that I wasn't there. So how will I get there? What sacrifices do I have to bring to myself, to the way I was doing things, in order to get there? So I was dreaming. I said, one day I will leave my village, I will travel, I will see all these things. So I was dreaming, but the dreams, of course, they were too big because it just didn't match my reality at all. And as I said, and I think I will cite Elaine Sirleaf Johnson here, she said, dream big. And if your dreams are not big enough, they don't scare you, then you have a problem. You always have to dream very, very big. So this is what I was trying to do when I was growing in my village. So the second question was about qualities, you said. Qualities, yeah. And again, yeah.
Qualities.
The qualities. As I said, women bring in a different kind of leadership quality. They bring in compassion. They are much more caring. They tend to be, to bring people around. They tend to be more pastoral. And I always said that toughness is not a sign of strength, right? And being compassionate is not weakness. And we need to have more and more people. We need to show more compassion, but without compromising, of course, the values of, hard work and your integrity in trying to do things. So these are things that, again, women bring on board. And this is why we need to have many more women at the table. And I make a plea to those women who are there to keep on bringing more women on board. But we need to have these kind of values.
Fabulous. And how women can work with men to make this happen, to advance the women cause, and what specific advice will you give to the next generation of female leaders?
I think it's more a question of how men can work with women, because I mean, if there are few of us, there are few of us. And I think, interestingly, Landry, is that I have seen some of the mentors of women, they have been men, and these men have been able to push these women beyond what they thought they could do. And by pushing them, by pushing to the limit, they actually develop skills that they didn't know were possible. So this is why we need to, when we address these issues, we have to address the gender component, both men and women, because we need both to work together. And if men can keep on taking women by the hand and keep on, helping them, we will see more women coming on board, because we need these women. We need the intuition. We need the intelligence. We need the way they do things. It's different. And we need also the human power. We are 52% of the world. So you cannot proceed with the fourth industrial revolution by eliminating 52% of our human capital. So this is why I keep making the plea that men need to encourage women more. We are not a threat to anyone. We just do things differently. And we just have to put away our ego on the side and just learn to value the potential and the drive and also the competence of that woman. That's all.
Fabulous. So leader always face challenging situation and a lot of criticism. And some member of the audience want to know how to handle those effectively.
You know, Landry, if you are humble, then you're not worried about positive or negative criticism because you know who you are. And if you're driven by a sense of purpose, by what you want to do, then I think it should just be water off a duck's back.
Fabulous. You always had the beautiful words to put things together, Excellency. On the collaboration between African countries, some members of the audience are concerned by the fact that after many decades after independence, the collaboration has not reached its full potential. What do you have to say about it?
I don't think that, you know, Africa has had, on average, about 55 years of post-independent history. And the remit of the African Union precisely is to promote integration, right? The languages should not be an issue anymore because increasingly, you know, initially in the olden days, we used to say there was a linguistic divide between the Francophone and of course Lusophone and Anglophone in Africa. We now see the potential and of course the potential that this brings on board if we are going to be, you know, to actually cut across, I mean, all the various blocks which exist in the world. So this is an asset. I don't see it as a negative, I see it as an asset. I don't see why Africa cannot be more integrated. And here I make a plea, ensure that mobility of Africans is possible. I mean, we should be able to move across our continent without so many visas, for example. This is something I keep saying all the time. We need to ensure the facility of the goods and services on the continent. And I don't see why, again, what's limiting goods going from West to East Africa, North to South. I mean, yes, Africa is more than 50 countries, it's 50, 54, 55, whichever we want to look at it politically. But, you know, we still have many things which unite us. I think there's more issues that unite us than divide us. So let us look at the positive side and just work towards a more integrated continent.
Yes, I couldn't agree more, Excellency. So I have a couple of questions. One from Charity Zulu. Most African countries have youth unemployment challenges, and despite having a number of graduates, so how can leaders help these graduates to transform their research into business enterprises? And when we also think about science and diplomacy, how could the Africa diaspora be leveraged more effectively to advance that technology transfer and leapfrogging on the continent?
You know, if you look at the World Bank figures, I think it says that every year Africa will be home to over 12 million graduates landing on the job market every year. And I don't think any government can be ambitious enough to think that they can create so many jobs. So I think increasingly, that's why I push for the notion of entrepreneurship. We need to encourage young entrepreneurs emerge on the continent. I've just mentioned, for example, agriculture as one area. But where governments, and this is where I make a plea to philanthropists on the continent, to the foundation which exists on the continent, to actually invest in the space. We need the science park, we need the technology park, we need to look at the intellectual property landscape of the continent. And this comes squarely to the governments in terms of investing in that space. If we invest in that space, we will be creating the necessary institution. We will be encouraging diaspora, talented people like yourself, Landry, to come to encourage brain circulation. I'm not being so optimistic to say we're going to have brain gain. I say brain circulation to begin with. But for brain circulation to happen, we need to have the ecosystem which we need to develop on the continent. And this is why we need to invest in that space. And this is where, again, there's so many good ideas coming out of university, which are being lost because they've been published. We need to protect that knowledge so that it becomes a vector for wealth creation, for job creation on the continent. And this is only possible when governments start speaking to the private sector, when there's a dialogue which is going on, along with philanthropists, along with the corporate sector, along with all the big actors of the economy to come together to create a space for our young people, because there'll be no jobs. And as I said, with the fourth industrial revolution, some of the jobs don't even exist. And I think we have seen with the COVID, one sector that we will never be surpassed or will never be replaced is the care economy, right? How do we leverage that? How do we leverage IT more and more? How do we invest in the bandwidth? I mean, all these questions are there. So there are plenty of low-lying fruit that can be harvested right now.
So, Excellency, those are great insights. Perhaps a final question. In terms of the relation between Africa and the rest of the world, whether India, China, the US, or the European Union, amongst others. So what are your thoughts on the future of the relation between Africa and the rest of the world on one hand, and on the other hand, on the future of global leadership? So what are the, we discussed already the question of individual leaders, but what characteristics the leaders will be able to handle the disruptive challenges that you are facing now? How should they look like?
Again, if I just go back with the immediate past of COVID, we have seen that multilateralism is still needed. We still need that very strong leadership across the world. And Africa is going to be a very, very important player. By 2050, we're going to be hosting about 2 billion people. I think 35% of the workforce is going to come from the African continent. So it's a huge asset, but at the same time, it can be a huge liability if we don't channel that energy of the young people towards creative position and creative ideas and technology and all the rest of it. So Africa is going to be a very big player, but we don't want Africa to just be a source of raw materials. We need Africa to start transforming things. We need Africa to start being innovative. And through innovation, through manufacturing, through transformation of our own resources, we can see Africa becoming a very key player on the world scene. And again, because we are on the world scene, because we believe in multilateralism, I think the African continent has a lot to offer in that space. And of course, who says, again, we can be more political. Africa should also ensure that it has, or she has, her place at the table of multilateral organizations. And here I look at, for example, the United Nations, where 70% of the agenda often is based on African issues. And do we have an African on the United Nations Security Council? It's a good question. So where does the union, or where do our institutions take us vis-a-vis all these very important institutions which will decide on the fate, not just of the African continent, but of the world, but we need to have a voice there.
Extraordinary, Excellency. And do you have any final thoughts on women, on leadership, on power, for the broader audience from across the world? I see people from India, I see people from Europe and North America, Africa. So what are your final thoughts, Excellency, for people who want to be with you?
Final thought is that let us invest in our human capital. And I say human capital with a big H. Again, we cannot ignore the 52%. So to our women and girls, let us say to ourselves that we can do it. We can be there because we are confident, we are capable, and we are smart. And we should be able to make a contribution to the livelihoods of our families, of our region, of our continent, and of course to the world. So let us say that we are beautiful, we are confident, we can do it. But having said this, we still need our fathers, we still need those cheerleaders, the men, to drive us through. And I'm sure we will be able to do it. And if we keep on along this route, we will definitely see a better tomorrow.
What a beautiful way to conclude, Excellency. We are very grateful for listening and you sharing your wisdom. So thank you very much for joining us, the Thunderbird School of Global Management and the Arizona State University are honored to have received you. I would also like to thank our audience coming from around the world, as well as the team which has contributed to V7, including Mike and Mike Grasso and Olivia Muleva. So thank you very much to everyone again, and Your Excellency, looking forward to the next conversation and to our next co-author publications.
Thank you so much, Landry, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Excellency. Bye.